My husband had an accident and ended up in a coma. During a hospital visit, my daughter came close to me and whispered, "Mom, Dad isn't sick. He's pretending." Confused, I replied, "What? Don't say that." Then she handed me his phone. And I was in shock. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, humming a sterile tune that blended into the quiet tension of the hallway. Emily Parker, 38 years old and wrapped in a navy trench coat far too thin for the cold air inside St. Jude Medical Center, walked with measured steps down the long corridor of the intensive care unit. Her heels clicked faintly against the linoleum floor, but even those small sounds felt intrusive in that space, as though noise itself was forbidden. Beside her, her 10-year-old daughter Lily clung tightly to her mother's hand, her sneakers squeaking with every other step. Her small fingers were wrapped around Emily's palm with such force, it felt more like Lily was holding her mother together rather than the other way around. It had been 3 days since the accident. The call had come in the middle of a routine Monday afternoon. Emily had been standing in the school pickup line when her phone rang. The voice on the other end, flat, professional, unreadable, told her that Michael Parker, her husband of 12 years, had been in a car crash. His sedan had been discovered wrapped around a highway guardrail, engines still running, airbags deployed. He had been alone. No signs of alcohol, no other vehicles involved. Just a twisted frame of metal and glass, and her husband unconscious inside it. The doctors had used the word coma like it was a technical term for sleep. Medically induced, they'd said. A precaution. Necessary. But there had been no brain trauma, no bleeding, nothing that explained why he was not waking up. Emily kept replaying that detail in her head. It felt off. As she reached the room, she paused outside the door. Lily looked up at her, not saying a word, just tightening her grip again. Emily nodded once, a silent agreement between mother and daughter, and gently pushed the door open. The hospital room was dim, the blinds drawn, machines quietly beeping in synchronized rhythms. Michael lay there, motionless, as he had for days. Tubes trailed from his arm, his nose, his chest. His skin was pale, his face unshaven, and his dark hair, usually meticulously styled, now curled awkwardly around his ears. Emily stepped forward slowly, her eyes scanning every inch of him as though trying to detect movement, any sign of life. She had done this routine every day, checking the rise and fall of his chest, watching the flickers of his eyelids, listening to the machine that monitored his heartbeat. But every time, it was the same. Stillness. Lily hesitated by the door, eyes fixed on her father. Her face was unreadable, but something in her gaze was too focused, too intense for a 10-year-old. Emily turned to her and offered a gentle smile. "You can come closer, sweetheart. It's okay." Lily nodded, stepping cautiously into the room. Her backpack bumped against the doorframe as she passed through, and she looked around, almost suspiciously. Emily noticed but said nothing. She walked to the chair by the bed and sat down slowly, her knees stiff from the long hours spent in that same seat the past few days. She reached for Michael's hand, cold to the touch, and gently held it between hers. Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. "They say you can hear me, Mike. I don't know if that's true, but I keep talking anyway." Lily didn't move. She stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed, eyes still locked on her father. Emily felt her daughter's stillness as something new. Not fear, not sadness. Something else. She glanced up at Lily. "You want to say something to Daddy?" Lily's eyes flicked to her mother's. There was a pause, brief, but heavy, before she shook her head slowly. Emily nodded, brushing Michael's hair back with one hand. "He's going to be okay. He has to be." But even as she said it, the words felt thin. Like paper soaked in water. She leaned back, exhaustion settling into her bones, her mind looping through memories of that morning before the accident, how normal everything had been. Michael had made pancakes. Kissed Lily on the forehead. Kissed Emily on the cheek. Said he'd be back in time for dinner. There had been no signs. No tension. No reason. Why had he been on the highway that day? Why did he leave his office early without telling anyone? She hadn't found answers, only questions that deepened like shadows under flickering lights. Outside, rain began to tap gently against the window. Lily moved closer to the bed, placing her hands on the rail. Emily watched her daughter's face, expecting tears, maybe fear. But what she saw instead unsettled her. Lily's lips were pressed into a tight line. Her brow furrowed. She stared at Michael like she was studying him, not in grief, but in quiet confusion. Emily opened her mouth to say something, but Lily suddenly turned to her and said softly, "Can we go now? I don't like this room." Emily stood up and hugged her daughter. "Just a few more minutes, okay?" Lily didn't reply. Her gaze had drifted back to Michael's face, unreadable once more. And Emily, for the first time since the crash, felt something gnawing at her chest, something other than sorrow. A flicker of doubt. The next morning, sunlight cut through the half-closed blinds of Emily's bedroom, but it did little to lift the weight that had settled over the house. Everything felt too quiet. The house that once echoed with laughter, small footsteps, and Michael's early morning news broadcasts now seemed like a hollow shell. Emily moved through it like a ghost, brewing coffee she never drank, staring at the toaster too long before remembering what she was doing, checking her phone every 5 minutes despite knowing it would remain silent. Lily had been quiet too. Not sullen, not weepy, just watchful. She had always been observant, even as a toddler, but lately there was a maturity in her eyes that unsettled Emily. As if she were holding on to something she couldn't name. By noon, Emily decided they should go to the hospital again. It had become a routine, a habit she couldn't break, even if each visit chipped away at her. Lily didn't argue. She grabbed her coat, slipped on her shoes, and followed Emily to the car without a word. The hospital was the same, sterile, quiet, too cold for comfort. Nurses offered the same polite smiles, and orderlies passed by with clipboards and carts of supplies. It all blurred together, as if the world had moved on while her life remained frozen at the moment Michael's car hit that guardrail. When they reached his room, Emily let Lily go in first. She watched her daughter walk in, shoulders squared, small fingers gripping the straps of her backpack. There was something deliberate in her movements that made Emily pause. As she stepped in behind her, she noticed that Lily wasn't walking toward her father's bedside as usual. Instead, she had stopped just inside the door, eyes fixed on Michael's face. Emily came to her side. "You okay?" she asked gently. Lily turned to her with an expression Emily hadn't seen before. Not sadness. Not confusion. Certainty. She tugged lightly at Emily's sleeve, pulling her down so she could whisper in her ear. "Mom," she said, voice low but steady, "Dad isn't sick, he's pretending." Emily froze. At first, she blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. She leaned back and stared at Lily. "What?" Lily didn't flinch. "He's not really sick." Emily looked quickly at the bed, at her husband lying motionless under the thin white sheet. "Don't say that," she whispered, more to herself than to Lily. "He's in a coma, sweetheart." "The doctors." "No," Lily interrupted softly. "He's pretending." Her tone was so calm, so eerily certain, that Emily could feel the skin on her arms prickle. She crouched to meet Lily's eyes. "Why would you say something like that?" Lily hesitated for the first time, then slipped off her backpack. From the side pocket, she pulled something out, a phone. Emily stared at it, confused for a beat, until she realized what it was. Michael's phone. Her heart skipped. "Where did you get that?" "It was under the blanket in the playroom," Lily replied. "With my toys. I thought it was mine at first. But it was Daddy's. It still had charge. I looked at it." "You shouldn't," Emily stopped herself, realizing how pointless that statement was now. The phone was already in her hand, slightly warm to the touch. She stood, eyes locked on the dark screen. The tension that had been building for days now hummed beneath her skin like electricity. Without another word, she turned away from Lily and sat in the chair beside Michael's bed. Her fingers hovered over the screen. The phone didn't have a lock. Of course it didn't. Michael always said he had nothing to hide. She pressed the button. The home screen blinked to life. Notifications appeared immediately, most of them from contacts she didn't recognize. Emily's breath caught as she scrolled through them. Names she'd never seen. Messages with no context. Numbers without names. But what truly caught her attention was a thread labeled simply DC. She tapped it. The messages were brief. Coded. Like people who didn't need to say much because everything had already been arranged. Everything's in place. She still doesn't know. Don't panic if something changes. And then, the last message, everything's ready. She won't suspect a thing. Emily's vision blurred. Her thumb hovered over the message, then moved to the timestamp, 2 days before the accident. Her stomach churned. Her pulse raced. She could hear the beeping of the heart monitor and her own breathing, suddenly too loud in her ears. She looked at Michael, unmoving, pale. Then back at the phone. She scrolled further. Older messages painted no clearer picture. The exchange was cold, clinical, devoid of emotion. Who the hell was DC? She set the phone in her lap and leaned back, closing her eyes, trying to suppress the wave of nausea that surged through her. What did this mean? Was he cheating? Hiding something? What could "everything's in place" possibly refer to? And why would Lily say he was pretending? Suddenly, the phone vibrated in her lap. Emily jumped, startled by the sudden buzz. A new message had appeared. Not from DC. From an unknown number. She opened it. Hi Emily. Still believe the accident was real? Her body went rigid. She looked around the room instinctively, as though the sender might be standing just behind her. The message felt targeted, deliberate. Her name. The implication. Someone was watching. She rose from the chair, backing away slightly. Lily, she said, voice tense. Wait outside for a moment. Lily obeyed without question. Emily could see the worry in her daughter's eyes, but she didn't want her near this, whatever this was. Once Lily was gone, Emily turned back toward the bed. She stared at Michael, her thoughts a storm of suspicion and disbelief. Her voice trembled as she spoke aloud. Who are you? No response. Just the soft rhythm of the machines. She clutched the phone tighter. If this was a prank, it was sick. If it was real, it was something else entirely, something she wasn't prepared to face. She went to the nurse's station moments later, phone in hand. She explained the message, her confusion, the disturbing nature of it. The nurse, a woman named Jenna she'd spoken to before, offered a kind but cautious smile. I'm sure it's nothing. Stress plays tricks on our minds, especially in times like these. Emily stared at her. I didn't imagine the message. I believe you, Jenna said gently. But people react in strange ways during trauma. Maybe someone sent a tasteless joke. Try to rest. You've been under a lot. Emily left without replying. She wasn't convinced. Not anymore. Back in the room, Lily waited with her arms crossed. She looked up as Emily entered. I didn't break it, she said softly, glancing at the phone. I just thought you needed to see it. Emily crouched and pulled her daughter into a tight hug. She didn't have the right words. She didn't know how to explain what was happening. But something had shifted. The ground beneath her wasn't stable anymore. That night, as she lay awake in bed, Michael's phone on the nightstand beside her, she kept replaying the message in her head. Still believe the accident was real? And Lily's voice, soft but steady, echoing again and again. Dad isn't sick, he's pretending. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay on her side, staring at the red glow of the digital clock across the room as the hours bled together. At one point, she reached for Michael's phone again, unable to resist its pull. The message from the unknown number still sat at the top of the screen, unanswered. She didn't dare reply. She didn't even dare block it. Something told her that whoever had sent it wasn't done yet, and a response might only invite more. The next morning, the sky was a dull, colorless gray. Rain clung to the windows, thick and constant, muffling the world outside. Lily sat at the kitchen table, tracing lazy circles on the wooden surface with her finger while her untouched cereal grew soggy in its bowl. Emily stood nearby, coffee in hand, but she didn't drink it. She was watching the phone again. Michael had left it unlocked. It wasn't something she had even considered strange until now. But suddenly, the fact that there was no passcode felt deliberate, like he'd wanted her to find something. Or maybe he hadn't expected to need to lock it ever again. After dropping Lily at school, Emily parked her car in a strip mall lot 2 blocks away from St. Jude Medical Center. The idea of going back to Michael's hospital room with the phone unanswered, the questions unresolved, filled her with dread. She wasn't ready to look at him again. Not until she knew what she was looking at. She opened the phone once more. This time, she went deeper. No longer just scrolling through notifications or reacting to surprises, she deliberately opened every folder, every app, every message thread. And that's when she saw it, an unfamiliar name in the messaging app. Not DC. Not a known contact. Just a number with no photo or name, and a series of texts that seemed far more personal. The last message from this thread had been sent 3 days before the crash. Same place, same time. One more meeting, then we're done. Emily opened the thread. The messages stretched back weeks, maybe even months. She didn't recognize the number, but the tone between Michael and the sender was intimate, careful. It wasn't flirtatious, exactly, but it wasn't businesslike either. Whoever this was, they knew him well. She scrolled, heart pounding. Need the documents by Tuesday. Will you be wired in time? If anything goes wrong, we vanish. She paused on that one. We vanish. Her fingers tightened around the phone. What had Michael been planning? Another text made her stomach turn. She's starting to get suspicious. I can't hold this together much longer. She looked at the timestamp, 8 days ago. Was he talking about her? She closed the thread and returned to the home screen. There was an app she hadn't seen before, buried in a folder named Utilities. It was a secure gallery, one of those hidden vault apps disguised to look like a calculator. She tapped it. No passcode. Inside, a dozen folders appeared, each with bland names: work, notes, scans, docs. She opened the one labeled work. Photos loaded slowly. The first was of a table at a coffee shop. The edge of a laptop. A blurry hand holding a manila envelope. The next photo showed Michael sitting across from a woman Emily didn't recognize, shoulder-length brown hair, sharp features, black blazer. She wasn't touching him, but they were clearly mid-conversation. Michael was leaning in, speaking, while the woman watched him intently. Emily flipped through more images, some taken indoors, some in a car, some at night. Michael always seemed on edge in the photos. In one, he was looking directly at the camera. Not smiling. Just watching. She returned to the one with the envelope. Zoomed in. There, scribbled across the front in black marker, Plan A. Her fingers went cold. She backed out of the folder and opened Docs. Scanned pages, grainy but legible. Financial statements. Insurance policies. A document labeled Contingency Outline. A contract, unsigned, but clearly a legal agreement of some kind, about offshore accounts and a change of identity. There was even a fake driver's license. Michael's face, a different name. Her vision blurred. She felt her knees weakening. She sat in the driver's seat of the car, the rain beating steadily against the windshield, and stared at the screen. He had a plan. He was going to disappear. And then the phone vibrated again. New message. Unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. This one was short. Just 4 words. You were never safe. She dropped the phone. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked out the window. Nothing seemed out of place, cars driving by, people walking under umbrellas, but now everything felt different. Like the world had become a set, and she was standing on the wrong side of the script. She picked up the phone with shaking hands. Screenshot. Screenshot. She saved everything she could. Her instincts screamed at her to go to the police, but something about the nature of it all made her pause. She needed to understand it first. Understand why. Instead of driving to the hospital, she found herself parked outside a library. She opened her laptop and searched the number from the messages. Nothing. She tried the number saved as DC. This time, something came up. David Carlisle. A criminal defense attorney based in Sacramento. Known for representing clients in white-collar crime cases, particularly fraud and financial manipulation. Recently in the news for defending a high-profile businessman accused of orchestrating an international insurance scam. Emily stared at the screen. Why would Michael be talking to someone like that? She copied the name. Saved it. Looked him up on social media. His profile was locked down. No public posts, no contact info, just a blurry photo of a courthouse. But the pieces were falling into place, too quickly. Too clearly. Michael had hired a criminal defense attorney. Michael had been preparing to vanish. And now he was lying in a hospital bed, supposedly unconscious, while messages warned her that nothing was as it seemed. The entire picture was beginning to twist into something unrecognizable. The man she had shared her life with, had built a family with, he wasn't the man she thought she knew. But the question that haunted her most wasn't how he had planned this, or even why. It was when. How long had he been planning to leave? Before the accident? Before the marriage had even begun to crack? Or had their entire life together just been a chapter in his plan? She sat in her car, her mind spinning with questions, the weight of the truth pressing down harder than ever. Then, for the first time since the crash, she let herself cry. But even then, she didn't stop watching the rearview mirror. Emily stayed in the car outside the library far longer than she intended. The rain had eased into a light drizzle, but she could barely feel the world around her. The phone rested on the passenger seat, dark now, but it felt radioactive, as if it might light up again at any moment and shatter what little stability she had left. Her fingers tapped restlessly on the steering wheel. You were never safe. The message burned in her thoughts, looping endlessly. The words were too specific, too personal. Whoever had sent them didn't just know what she was reading, they understood what she was feeling. And that terrified her. It wasn't until the dashboard clock read almost noon that she realized she'd lost over 2 hours just sitting there. She started the car and drove toward the hospital, still unsure what she would do once she got there. Confront Michael? Watch him lie still and pretend again? Talk to a doctor? A nurse? None of it felt right. But there was one thing she knew she had to do: protect Lily. The thought of her daughter reading those messages, seeing those images, understanding even a fraction of what was happening, sent a wave of cold panic through her. Back at the hospital, she passed through the front entrance as if sleepwalking. A volunteer offered her a mask and a visitor sticker. She nodded absently, accepting both, then made her way toward the elevators. Her steps slowed as she reached the ICU floor. She didn't go straight to Michael's room. Instead, she walked to the nurse's station. Jenna wasn't there this time. A different nurse, mid-30s, scrubs covered in cartoon animals, looked up and smiled politely. Hi, can I help you? Emily hesitated. Yes. I was wondering, is there any surveillance on this floor? Like cameras outside the patient rooms? The nurse tilted her head. I think there's one in the hallway, yes. Why? Emily forced a smile. Just, something strange happened yesterday. I wanted to know if there was a way to review the footage. My husband's room is 4B. The nurse frowned slightly. You'd have to talk to hospital security. They don't usually release footage unless there's been an incident. There was an incident, Emily said, trying to keep her voice calm. Someone may have entered his room. The nurse looked more concerned now. Did you see someone? Emily nodded slowly, even though she hadn't. I think so. Just, please. Can you notify security? I'll call them now, the nurse replied, already picking up the phone. Emily thanked her and stepped away before she could ask more questions. She knew what she'd said wasn't entirely true, but something told her it wasn't entirely false either. Someone had gotten to Michael. Maybe not physically. Maybe not recently. But the way things were unraveling, it wouldn't surprise her if they had been in that room, watching, waiting, listening. She walked down the hall and entered the room. Michael was where she'd left him, motionless, pale, expressionless. His eyes closed. His body still. She sat in the chair beside the bed, the phone clutched tightly in her hands. She stared at him for a long moment, then leaned forward. If you can hear me, she whispered, I want you to know I've seen everything. The phone. The messages. Rachel. DC, whatever this is. I know. No response. Her gaze lingered on his face. He looked peaceful. But she no longer saw her husband lying there. She saw a stranger wearing his skin. A soft knock came at the door. She looked up, startled. It was a man she hadn't seen before, early 50s, salt and pepper beard, plain suit, hospital visitor badge clipped to his breast pocket. Mrs. Parker? He asked politely. Yes? I'm Officer Linwood. Hospital security asked me to speak with you. She stood slowly, feeling like she was being pulled upward by an invisible string. Right. I wanted to ask about surveillance. We don't monitor individual rooms, he said quickly, stepping inside, but we do have hallway footage. Would you mind telling me what you think happened? Emily told him what she could without sounding unstable, that she had reason to believe someone had been tampering with her husband's belongings, possibly even watching them. She left out the phone, the texts, the plan to disappear. She needed to understand more herself before opening that door. Officer Linwood took a few notes, nodded, and promised to look into it. He gave her a card with his name and number. Told her to call if anything felt off. She pocketed the card, thanked him, and watched as he walked away. Then, just as she turned back toward Michael, the phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it wasn't from the unknown number. It was from her. Her own name appeared as the sender, Emily Parker. And the message read, You can't trust the police. He paid them too. Her breath left her body in a sharp, painful exhale. Her heart pounded. She opened her contacts, searched the message, checked the metadata. It wasn't a message she had sent. There was no evidence of a sent thread on her device. Whoever had done it had spoofed her number, or worse. She looked over her shoulder. She felt watched. Not just in a paranoid way, viscerally. As if eyes were on her. As if someone, somewhere, was reacting to what she was doing in real time. She stood up and backed away from the bed. She needed air. Space. A plan. As she exited the room, she nearly bumped into one of the nurses. Everything okay, Mrs. Parker? I need a moment, Emily muttered. Just a moment. She made her way outside, into the back parking lot where few visitors went. The wind had picked up. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy with moisture. She stared at her phone, now trembling in her hand. This wasn't just about Michael's secrets anymore. This was about her being targeted. A message sent from her own name. A warning not to trust the police. A husband lying in a bed, pretending, or worse, orchestrating something far beyond what she understood. She thought of Lily. She thought of the way her daughter had looked at Michael yesterday, not afraid, not confused. Just certain. As if she had known before Emily had. There was more to this than texts. More than fake documents and meetings with strangers. Someone was manipulating all of it. And Emily had the sinking feeling that she was already in deeper than she knew how to climb out from. She tightened her grip on the phone, then opened a new browser window. She searched the name again, Rachel. No last name. No clear ID. Nothing from the gallery photos to match. But then she remembered something. Michael had a work calendar synced to their shared email account. She hadn't checked it in days. She opened it. Scroll back. 3 weeks ago. An entry on a Wednesday. Meeting, R. Then again, the week before that. Lunch, R. Her hands trembled as she opened the address listed. It was a cafe downtown. She memorized the name. Closed the app. She was going there. She didn't care what she found, or who. Because the only way to get to the truth now, was to step straight into it. Emily's hands shook as she drove toward the cafe whose name she had memorized from Michael's calendar. It was a small, unassuming place, clean windows, dark wood panels, a modest neon sign with the name Rosewood Coffee and Books. The kind of place where people linger over lattes and browse dusty shelves for hours. The address matched Michael's calendar entry exactly. Her pulse pounded not just from fear but from a hope she tried not to name. Maybe she would finally see Rachel, face to face, and understand everything. She parked across the street and watched the door. Inside, a couple of people flipped through hardcover books, a barista with a looming beanie poured espresso behind a counter. It was midday and quiet. Just enough ambient chatter to mask what she felt, that she was stepping into someone else's world. Emily crossed the street, umbrella in hand, folding it as she entered. The warm smell of coffee, books, and old paper hit her. She glanced around, scanning faces, looking for someone with the brown shoulder-length hair from the photos. Someone speaking softly into a phone. Someone who looked like they had secrets. Lily's voice echoed in her memory, "He's pretending." She held Michael's phone in her hand and saw Rachel's face repeatedly. She had to know. She found a corner table by the bookshelves, placed her purse and Michael's phone beside her. She ordered a cappuccino, extra foam. While the barista worked, Emily opened the phone, breathing shallow, flipping to the hidden gallery folder labeled Work. She tapped the photo with the envelope labeled Plana again. She zoomed in on the envelope. She could read faint handwriting, partly smudged by rush, foundation release, something like seal date, and a scribble that looked like an address crossed out. She snapped a photo of the screen with her own phone, evidence. She needed proof. Then the door chimed. A woman came in, shaking off rain, clutching a purse. She glanced around, paused, then her eyes locked onto Emily's face. Emily's chest clenched. The woman walked purposefully toward her table. It was Rachel. Rachel looked exactly like in the photos, sharp features, brown hair cut just past her shoulders, eyes clear and alert. She hesitated for a moment, then approached. "Emily?" she asked, voice low but steady. Emily's throat went dry. She looked at the phone on the table. She wanted to ask Rachel to explain. To deny. To lie, maybe, to preserve something, anything. But betrayal has a way of stripping facades. "Yes," Emily said. "We need to talk." Rachel nodded, and thrust a hand forward. "I didn't expect you'd come here. Michael said once we could meet if you ever had doubts." Emily stared at her. "You too, what's going on? Who are you really to him?" Rachel sank into the chair. She looked nervous, more nervous than Emily expected. She glanced at the phone. "You have that photo," she said. "The one with Planet. How do you?" Rachel shook her head. "He sent it. To me. Him telling me the plan was in motion. He thought if you discovered something, you'd know why." Emily's grip tightened on her own coffee cup. Why involve you? And what's plan A? Rachel exhaled. It's not just about disappearing or hiding. It's about insurance, contracts, money he promised to protect us with. It was supposed to be a contingency. If the financial pressure got too high, if debts overwhelmed. He wanted you and Lily safe. Emily's brow furrowed. Safe? By lying? By pretending you exist? Rachel nodded. Yes. By arranging things so that the insurance, life insurance, disability, others, would cover everything. There were legal documents involved. Offshore accounts. Fake identities. Change of address. All part of it. Emily's mind screamed against what she was hearing. But the accident, the hospital, the coma. It was supposed to be staged, Rachel said, voice barely above a whisper. Smoke and mirrors until you moved away, until everything cleaned up. Then he would come back. With everything settled. He would reveal the truth. Emily looked at the people around, the barista, other customers. As if they might overhear, as if their ears were part of the plan too. She leaned forward. Something went wrong. Rachel's eyes flickered down. Yes. Something broke. Michael collapsed, physically, emotionally. The pressure. He couldn't keep the act. Then the coma became real, or so they think. But he didn't wake up. Emily felt tears sting at her eyes. She thought of Michael lying in that bed, his body slack, his chest rising and falling mechanically. All those days she believed in the hope of recovery. All the while, a lie had been growing underneath. Rachel placed a hand on Emily's. He wanted to protect you. He said he loved you. But he also said he was scared, to fail. The cafe door chimed again. A man stepped inside. Tall, heavy coat, face partially hidden under a scarf. Emily looked up sharply. The man glanced in her direction. Her heart thudded. She recognized him, David Carlyle, the attorney. He nodded subtly to Rachel, then looked toward Emily. Rachel's face drained color. He's been watching us, Rachel hissed. She stood abruptly. You should leave now. Emily stood too. No. I need to face it. Rachel shook her head. If he's here, it's not safe for you. Emily ignored her. She walked toward the door. Carlyle was halfway across the room. She confronted him. David Carlyle. He froze. Why are you here? She asked. Her voice sharper than she meant. Why risk everything coming here? Carlyle's scarf slipped slightly, revealing his jaw. He took off the scarf. His voice was low. I came because Rachel sent me. She said you'd come. Rachel looked between them. Carlyle sighed. Emily, you misunderstand. The plan included contingencies because there are people who can make things very complicated. The debts Michael had, they weren't just banks. There are individuals who expect repayment in their terms. Emily set her jaw. So you manipulated me. The messages. The videos. The insurance. The coma. All of it. Carlyle held up a hand. Not manipulated. Protected. Protected with lies, she said. And now we're in danger. Outside the cafe, the sky darkened. A storm brewing. Emily glanced out the window, saw rain starting again. She looked at Lily, distant in her mind, wanting to shield her from anything. Carlyle spoke quietly. This isn't over. Even if you expose everything, Michael's actions will bring consequences. Not just legal, but worse. Emily felt bile rise in her throat. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she reopened them, she looked at Carlyle. I want truth. I want to understand every piece before I decide what to do. Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. I can help you. I have more photos. Documents you haven't seen. Carlyle looked at Rachel, then at Emily. We can go through everything, but discretion. It's the only way to keep Lily safe. Emily swallowed hard. The weight of the evidence, the betrayal, the danger, it all felt like quicksand. Show me, she said. All of it. Rachel took a bag from under her chair and handed Emily a sealed envelope. Carlyle watched. In the envelope were printed photos, of Michael signing papers, meetings in dim offices, envelopes exchanged, passports with false identities, insurance policies in other names. A thick packet with documents stamped, final draft, confidential, escrow. Emily's heart pounded as she leafed through them. She saw her name in some documents, in lives she couldn't recognize, signatures she had never made. She gasped at a ledger that listed sums she thought were impossible. Then one photo, Michael and Rachel standing in front of a private jet at a small airfield. Rachel holding 2 passports, one under a false name. The wind caught Michael's jacket. For a moment he looked at the camera, and looked afraid. The storm outside burst into thunder. Rain lashed the window. Emily realized that no matter what she did next, nothing could go back to how it was before. She folded the documents, pocketed the envelope, and looked at both Rachel and Carlyle. I need to protect Lily, she said, voice steadier than she felt. After that, I decide. They nodded. Carlyle lowered his eyes. Rachel clasped Emily's hand. For the first time in days, Emily felt something tighten, not fear, but clarity. She left rosewood coffee and books clutching the envelope. She locked the door behind her. The rain pounded her as she walked. In her coat pocket, Michael's phone buzzed. She didn't look. She didn't want to know who it was now. Emily drove home in silence, the envelope Rachel had given her still resting in the passenger seat, weighed down by layers of betrayal. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault on the windshield, each drop like a small hammer echoing her heartbeat. Inside the car, there was only the soft hum of the engine and the oppressive quiet that always follows too many truths delivered too quickly. She had not checked the phone again. Whatever had buzzed in her coat pocket as she left the cafe could wait. Right now, she needed to understand what she was holding. She needed to read, verify, connect everything. Rachel had promised answers, real ones, and Emily had no choice but to believe her. At least for now. When she arrived home, the house felt untouched, but foreign. Lily was still at school. Emily had several hours before she would need to become a mother again, before she would need to put on a calm face and pretend like everything hadn't just changed forever. She placed the envelope on the kitchen table and opened it slowly. The photographs were carefully ordered, clipped into categories: financial, legal, travel, and personal. Emily scanned them one by one, her breath catching as she recognized familiar handwriting, forged signatures, Michael's slanted capital letters across documents she'd never seen before. Bank statements showed money she didn't know they had, thousands moved in and out of accounts under names she didn't recognize. Some accounts were clearly fake, opened in countries she'd never visited. Some were routed through shell companies, others flagged with internal notes like, pending release, and, client override. She opened a smaller envelope tucked inside. It held photocopies of identification cards. One was Michael's, with a new name, Ethan Rowell. Another was Rachel's, labeled Melissa Carter. A third, buried deeper, made her blood run cold. It was her. A photo of her driver's license, but with a different address, and a slightly altered name, Emily Roth. She flipped it over. The back showed a series of barcode stamps she'd never seen before. Below them, in faint print, Beneficiary Level 2, Shared Contingency. She stared at it. Michael hadn't just planned to disappear. He had planned to take her identity with him. Or, manufacture a new one, on her behalf. She turned to the legal documents. One was a guardianship draft, predated and unsigned. It transferred temporary custody of Lily to a woman named Margaret Hines, someone she'd never heard of. A second document referenced a power of attorney, granted to a David Carlyle, for assets Emily had no memory of agreeing to give away. Her mind reeled. The photo of Michael in front of the private jet returned to her thoughts. He looked afraid, yes, but also resigned. As if, in some twisted way, he thought he was protecting them by vanishing. Maybe he believed he was saving them. Or maybe he had crossed a line so far back that this had become the only way forward. Emily dropped the photos and walked to the living room. She sat on the couch, phone in hand, and finally unlocked it. The unread message was still there. This time, the number was familiar. It was Sarah, Michael's sister. The message read, "Emily, I know what he was planning. I should have warned you. Please call me." She hadn't spoken to Sarah in months, not since an argument Michael brushed off as sibling tension. He had told her not to worry, said Sarah had always been dramatic. Now, Emily realized he had been isolating her from anyone who might question his version of reality. She called the number immediately. Sarah picked up on the second ring. "Emily," her voice sounded strained, cautious. "Sarah. I saw the documents. I saw everything." "What did you know?" A pause. Then, "Not enough. But enough to know he was planning something bad. He came to me 4 months ago. Said he needed to borrow money. A lot of it. He was desperate, but cagey. He said if I helped him, he'd make sure I was taken care of later." "Did he mention Rachel?" "No. Just some partner he kept referring to. I assumed it was a business deal. Then I started getting calls. Strange numbers. Men asking if I knew where he was. If he had assets in my name. I told him to stay away after that. We fought. Haven't spoken since." Emily tightened her grip on the phone. "Did he say why he needed to disappear?" "Not directly. But he was scared. He said he owed people who didn't forgive. That the only way out was to fake his way out." Emily hesitated, then asked, "Do you know the name Margaret Hines?" A sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Yes. She's not someone you want involved in your life. She used to handle forged documentation, transitions, identity changes. Dangerous people used her. Last I heard, she vanished 5 years ago." Emily looked back at the documents on the table. The guardianship draft. The altered ID. "She didn't vanish," Emily said quietly. "Michael was still working with her." Sarah went quiet. "I need to know more," Emily said. "Whatever you have. If there's anything else." "There is," Sarah whispered. "But I'm scared to say it over the phone. Can you come to me?" Emily glanced at the time. It was just after 3 o'clock. "I have to pick up Lily in half an hour. Can I come afterward?" "Yes. Please. I'll wait for you." They hung up. Emily stood in the kitchen again, heart pounding. She needed to go to Sarah's. She needed to know how deep this went. But first, she had to get Lily. By 4 o'clock, Lily was in the back seat, playing quietly with her doll. Her small voice hummed as Emily drove through the narrow back roads that led to Sarah's cottage outside town. Emily didn't speak much. Her thoughts spiraled. When they pulled into Sarah's driveway, Emily's nerves were already fraying. Sarah greeted them at the door, face pale, arms open. She knelt and hugged Lily tight before guiding them inside. Her living room was dim, cluttered, but warm. Old photographs lined the walls, family trips, holiday dinners. Michael appeared in several. In one, he stood beside Emily, holding Lily as a baby. Emily had forgotten that smile, the real one, not the practiced one. Sarah made tea. They sat. Then, she handed Emily a small folder. "What's this?" Emily asked. "Michael left it at my place weeks ago. I didn't know what it was. I didn't open it until yesterday." Emily opened it. Inside were printed emails, correspondence between Michael and someone named Foster Security Consulting. Several exchanges referred to movement schedules, blind addresses, encrypted backups, and a coded phrase. Bluebird release, confirmed before October 1st. What does Bluebird mean? Emily asked. Sarah shook her head. No idea. But I googled the company. It doesn't exist. Not officially. But I found one mention, on a legal blog. It was linked to a fraud case in Chicago. Shell companies. Fake identities. A whole network, now dismantled. But Michael used their name. Emily scanned the emails. In one of them, dated 10 days before the accident, Michael had written, "She suspects. I may need to advance Bluebird." Emily looked up, trembling. He was preparing to leave me. With Lily. Before any of this happened. Sarah reached over and placed a hand on hers. You can still stop it. Whatever pieces of his plan are left, we'll find them. Emily nodded slowly. But then, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was a single line. Bluebird is already in motion. And beneath it, a file attachment. A photo. Of Lily. At school. Taken that morning. Emily's hands clenched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The photo was unmistakable, Lily standing near the school gate that morning, her pink backpack slung over one shoulder, head slightly turned as if someone had called her name. The image was crystal clear. Taken from a close distance. Someone had been watching her daughter. Her heart slammed against her ribcage. She stood abruptly, knocking over the tea Sarah had just poured. The cup shattered on the hardwood floor. Emily? Sarah jumped to her feet. They sent me a picture, Emily said, her voice nearly a whisper. Of Lily. From today. Sarah's face went pale. She looked toward the hallway where Lily was playing with a puzzle on the floor, humming softly to herself, completely unaware of the storm surrounding her. Did you tell anyone you were coming here? Sarah asked. Emily shook her head. No. I didn't even use the GPS. I've been avoiding every digital trail. But it doesn't matter. They're watching us. They've been watching for a while. Sarah pulled all the curtains closed. Emily followed, heart pounding in her ears. She looked out the window through a narrow slit between the fabric. A black car was parked across the street, engine off, windows tinted too dark to see through. Her stomach dropped. We need to go, she said. Now. Sarah nodded. Where? Emily grabbed her bag and motioned toward Lily. Someplace no one expects. Somewhere offline. They packed in under 10 minutes. Sarah loaded essentials into the trunk, while Emily gently took Lily's hand, whispering, We're going on a little trip, okay? Just you, me, and Aunt Sarah. Lily tilted her head. Is it because of the picture? Emily froze. What picture? The one you looked at when you dropped your phone, Lily said. The one with me at school. Emily knelt beside her. How did you know that? I saw it. And the name Bluebird. You were scared. Lily's voice was soft, but her eyes were steady. Emily looked into her daughter's eyes and realized that Lily understood more than she ever let on. She nodded slowly. Yes, sweetheart. And I promise I won't let anything happen to you. They left through the back, taking a narrow road Sarah had used during childhood to reach the freeway. The black car didn't follow, at least, not visibly. Emily checked every mirror, every reflection in passing windows, scanned license plates, memorized faces. 2 hours later, they arrived at an abandoned motel Sarah remembered from years ago, off Highway 54, tucked behind an overgrown line of trees. The vacancy sign was dark, half the building boarded up, but the manager lived on site and still rented a few rooms under the table. Sarah paid in cash, and they checked into room 6, a corner unit with creaky floors and peeling wallpaper. Inside, The silence was eerie. Emily locked every bolt, pushed a dresser against the door, and closed the curtains with surgical precision. Sarah checked the windows for any gaps. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, drawing on a hotel notepad, humming the same quiet tune she had at Sarah's house. Only then did Emily sit down and open the phone again. The photo was still there. No message followed it. No threats. Just that haunting image. She needed answers, and fast. She opened the email correspondence again. The name, Foster Security Consulting, had appeared repeatedly. She Googled it again, more methodically this time, using different combinations: legal cases, client complaints, public filings. Most results led to dead ends, fake directories, broken links, scraped contact forms. But one name popped up on a forum for cybercrime investigations. A comment, buried in a thread dated 4 months earlier. Foster SC is a shell. But it operates through a tech front in Nevada, Black Hollow Labs. Ask for Marcus. Emily's eyes narrowed. She copied the name Black Hollow Labs and began another search. The site looked legitimate, sleek, minimal, offering data solutions and cybersecurity consulting. But there was no address listed. Just a generic contact form and an email domain she'd never seen before. She didn't fill out the form. Instead, she searched deeper, using Michael's phone. She combed through old emails again, looking for anything related to Black Hollow. In one buried draft folder, she found a half-written message. To Marcus, per our last meeting, do not contact Emily directly. All communications go through DC until Phase 2. She read it twice. Phase 2. They were already in Phase 2. Michael might be comatose, but his plans were still moving without him. Emily stared at the screen. Her breath caught. Phase 2 meant she was next. There was only one way to fight this: find Marcus. And cut the connection at its source. She stepped outside the motel room, Sarah trailing close behind. I'm going to Reno, she said. Sarah blinked. What? Why? I need to find Marcus. He's the key. Michael trusted him. He knows where the rest of this trail leads. Sarah grabbed her arm. You can't just walk into some fake company and expect the truth. I won't walk in, Emily replied. But I'll find him. If I have to use Michael's name to draw him out, I will. Sarah hesitated. What about Lily? Emily glanced back at the room. She stays here. With you. One day. That's all I need. Sarah's mouth tightened, but she nodded. Be careful. Emily left that evening. She took Sarah's car and drove for 5 hours, all the way to Reno. She used only cash, gas stations, food, everything. She parked a block from the address she found in a corporate licensing database, Black Hollow Labs, Suite 203, 7 Trenton Avenue. The building was gray, glass-paneled, mostly empty. A buzzer system out front. No names on the directory. Just suite numbers. She buzzed 203. Nothing. She buzzed again. This time, a voice answered. Yes? I'm here for Marcus, Emily said. Michael Parker sent me. A long pause. Then, who are you? I'm his wife. Silence. Come up. She stepped inside and took the elevator up to the second floor. Suite 203 was tucked at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar when she arrived. Inside was a sparse office, 2 desks, multiple monitors, a wall of locked filing cabinets. Marcus was in his 30s, hoodie and jeans, narrow frame, pale skin, restless eyes. You shouldn't be here, he said. Then tell me why I am. He closed the door behind her. Michael wasn't supposed to go this far. Not with you. He did, she said. And now someone sent me a photo of my daughter. You're going to explain why? Marcus sighed and rubbed his eyes. Michael paid me to set up digital routes, IDs, backups, erasures. He had a failsafe if things went south. Phase 1 was the fake accident. Phase 2 was the transition. But he never told me he had a child. Emily stepped closer. Who's running it now? I don't know. I swear. My role ended when he disappeared. I only answered to him or Carlisle. What's Bluebird? Marcus looked up sharply. You weren't supposed to know that. I know more than you think, Emily said. Tell me. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, handed it to her. It was a flowchart, cryptic, technical, but one part was clear: Bluebird activation equals Guardian override plus subject displacement. Emily felt her stomach twist. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about Lily. Who is the Guardian? She asked. I don't know, Marcus said. But if Bluebird's active, someone's coming for her. Emily took the paper and walked out. Back in the car, she called Sarah. No answer. She called again. Straight to voicemail. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. From the same unknown number. Too slow. And attached, another photo. This one showed an open motel room door. And Lily's doll lying on the floor. Emily stared at the photo on her phone, the motel door wide open, and Lily's doll fallen on the tile floor, alone, exposed. Her breath hitched. She slammed the phone shut and shoved it into her bag. The motel room they'd abandoned in haste now seemed invaded, irrevocably vulnerable. She drove, hands trademark trembling at 10 and 2, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles whitened in the weak streetlights. Rain had started again, heavy sheets dragging across the windshield. The radio was off. Only the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the distant thunder overhead kept her company. She glanced in the rearview mirror, expecting headlights. But nothing followed, at least for now. Even that absence made her heart pound louder, making every shadow feel like someone stepping out of darkness. She needed Sarah. Needed Lily safe. Night was closing in, and every mile felt like an echo of danger. She took a connector road she'd known, 2-lane, no lights, flanked by thick trees. Every curve, every faded sign, every headlight in the distance, a threat. But she kept going. Her phone buzzed. A message popped up: you always underestimate how dangerous men protect themselves. No name. No number. Just the words. Emily's pulse spiked. She nearly swerved. Rainwater splashed from the road's cracked shoulder. She wrapped the steering wheel. She couldn't let fear paralyze her, not now. She spotted headlights far behind, but too far to tell make or model. She increased speed, adrenaline flooding. Her eyes darted between the road and the mirror. Each second felt stretched, a prelude. The road curved sharply ahead. She braked. Tires skidded. Water pooled. The car fishtailed. She fought for control. The back end swung outward. Her heart lodged in her throat. A scream caught in her throat. Time stretched. Metal screeched. The car slid off the road. Emily slammed a foot down. The car struck gravel, then dirt, skidded into a shallow ditch by the trees. The engine roared, then died. Windows rattled. Rain lashed glass. Emily's chest heaving, panic burning through every nerve. The adrenaline avalanche after impact jolted her consciousness alive. Everything went silent except the rain pounding the roof. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, wet and shaking. She gasped. For a moment she didn't move. Reality felt fractured. Her head buzzed. Lily. Sarah. Did they see? Did they know? She unbuckled her seatbelt. Each movement felt heavy, slow. She opened the door. Rain smashed into her face. She climbed out. Water pooled around her ankles. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She looked at the road. No car behind. No headlights. No one. She scanned the tree line. Only rustling leaves and darkness. She bent and reached under the seat for her bag. The phone vibrated again. She pulled it out with a wet hand. The screen was lit with rain-spotted digits. Drop everything, Emily. Bluebird wants its pet returned. Below, another image, Lily's backpack, purple, with floral patches, lying empty on the pavement near the school drop-off. Lily wasn't in the photo, just the backpack, as if someone had taken it seconds after she left. Emily's legs buckled. She dropped to one knee. Cold crept through her coat. The rain-soaked ground soaked through her jeans. She closed her eyes, wishing, for a moment, this was a nightmare. She stood up again. There was no sense in falling apart out here. She had to move. She pulled open the car door and grabbed what was left, a wet envelope clutched between the seat and the center console. Rachel's envelope, the documents. They were saturated. Some photos smudged. Some IDs stained. But the data was still there. Legible. Evidence. Lightning cut across the sky. Thunder rattled. She hesitated, torn between stay and escape. Trauma had paralyzed her, but fierce maternal instinct roared to life. Lily. She needed Lily safe. She trudged through the rain toward the trees, toward where she thought the motel was miles back. Either she tracked the danger back to them or flee far enough nobody could find her or Lily. Her phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. Every step she took was soaked, cold, exhaustion mounting. Her vision blurred at the edges. She imagined Sarah's face, Lily's surprised eyes. If anyone should be betrayed, it should be her, not Lily. She tripped over a hidden root. Slipped. The slick earth threw her off balance. She fell forward, hands digging into mud. She gasped, out of breath, pain searing through her palms. Then a voice. Emily. She froze. Wet branches scraped across the windshield of a car parked ahead under a lonely streetlight. The headlights cut a rectangle of yellow into the rain dark. The driver's side door opened. A tall silhouette emerged, angled, familiar. Sarah? Emily whispered, hope and dread tangled. No, the figure said, voice cold, clipped. It's me. Her heart thundered. She recognized him before she could process. David Carlyle stepped into the light. His face partially hidden under hood, sleeves wet, shoes muddy. Why are you following me? She asked. Rain plastering hair to her face. You didn't answer my last call, he said. The light made his eyes gleam. You know what Bluebird does to those who run. Emily swallowed. She thought of Lily, the backpack, the photo. Leave me alone. Carlyle shook his head. Not until this ends. Ends how? She demanded. He stepped closer, water dripping from his coat. You have something I want. You have that envelope. The flowcharts. The IDs. You're holding pieces of a plan that can undo a lot. Emily held the soggy envelope closer to her chest. You promised protection. For Lily? Yes, I did. Carlyle's voice dropped. But promises are fragile when fear is real. Emily backed away, slipping on wet ground. She landed in the ditch. Rain filled the dip around her. She watched as Carlyle approached. His shoes soaked. He crouched. He held out one hand. Give it to me. She spat words between clenched teeth. What do you want? To take them away from me? To threaten my daughter? Carlyle's gaze hardened. I never said threats. Just truth. Emily closed her eyes. Thunder boomed overhead. Dirt, rain, and night folded around them. The wind shredded branches. A car passed in the distance, its headlights sweeping across the ditch, then gone. If I give you the envelope, Emily said, voice small, wavering, will you let Lily go? Carlyle remained silent. The rain fell heavier. Emily's teeth chattered. She hugged the envelope. She thought of Lily curled up at Sarah's, unaware. Carlyle's boots sank into mud. He paused. I could, he said finally. But you have to do exactly as I say. Emily's heart twisted at the weight of the choice. Obey him to protect Lily? Or refuse and risk everything? A bolt of lightning flared, illuminating Carlyle's full face, cold, determined, dangerous. He stretched out his hand again. Emily trembled. The rain blurred her vision. The envelope soaked. The thunder rolled. And for the first time, Emily realized that no plan would save them if she didn't act. She lunged, wet and desperate, for her car door. Carlyle's voice rose, don't! Metal screamed. Emily yanked the door open, ripped the envelope from under her arm, lunged in. Cold slowed her movements. Fingers slick with rain. She slammed the door, locked it. But as she sank into the driver's seat, Carlyle was there, outside, hands stretching through the window. The envelope was torn. Photos and documents scattered in the back seat, fluttering like wet wings. Carlyle's fingers brushed one corner of the envelope. Emily twisted, yanking the door shut. He pounded the window with a fist. The windshield splintered faintly under the blow. Emily ignored the pain. She put the car in reverse, slipped out of the ditch with a jolt, tires spinning. Water sluiced. Road gravel, mud. She floored the gas pedal. The engine roared. Rain blurred everything. She turned onto the road, driving blind for moments, heart pounding, vision streaming with rain. Behind her, the silhouette of Carlyle watching. Her throat raw, her hands bleeding from broken glass. The envelope in her backpack now empty. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. She just drove. Emily drove through the storm until her arms went numb and the exhaustion in her chest became louder than the engine. The envelope was torn, half of the documents lost in the ditch, scattered into the rain like broken promises. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened every time her mind replayed Carlyle's voice, calm, dangerous, inevitable. She didn't stop until dawn broke across the sky in a haze of cold blue. The rain had slowed, the roads were quieter, and the adrenaline that had fueled her flight began to dissolve into a gnawing fatigue. She pulled into an old roadside diner outside the small town of Fair Hollow. The parking lot was empty except for a single pickup truck coated in dried mud. The neon sign buzzed, and the glass door was propped open with a brick. She parked behind the building, out of view from the road. Inside, the air was warm, heavy with the smell of old coffee and fried bacon. A woman behind the counter looked up, surprised to see anyone at that hour. Emily gave her a tight smile and took a booth in the farthest corner, back against the wall, facing the door. She ordered a black coffee and a glass of water, then pulled out her phone. No new messages. She unlocked it and opened the photo again, the motel door, the doll, the image that had sent her running. She zoomed in, analyzing every detail. There was something off. The angle. The light. The timestamp. It had been taken hours before she'd even arrived in Reno. Meaning whoever sent it had anticipated her next steps. Or had orchestrated them. She looked around the diner. Empty tables. The quiet buzz of the kitchen behind the counter. No one watching her. Still, she kept her phone close. Then she remembered something. Sarah had mentioned that Michael once spent part of a summer at a cabin in the northern part of the state. Somewhere near a lake. Emily hadn't paid much attention to the story back then, but now it came rushing back. He had called it his escape place, a retreat from his father's temper and his mother's drinking. Back then, he described it as the only place he could breathe. Emily reached into her bag and pulled out the last intact piece of Rachel's envelope, a damp, wrinkled photo of Michael as a teenager, standing on a wooden dock with a fishing rod in one hand and a crooked smile. In the background, A wooden sign nailed to a tree. She squinted at the photo. It read, Mile Creek Lodge, EST 1952. Her pulse quickened. She opened the browser and searched the name. A few results came up. Most were old forum posts, a handful of cabin rental listings, and one real estate archive that mentioned a cluster of unlisted properties off Lake Barrington, 40 miles north. She pulled up the map. The lake was deep in a forest reserve, accessible only by a single winding road that split off from a state highway. If Michael had hidden anything, documents, hard drives, money, instructions, it would be there. She finished the coffee, tipped the waitress generously, and left without speaking. The air was cold and sharp as she stepped outside. She got back in the car, entered the destination manually, and started driving. 3 hours later, the road narrowed to gravel, and pine trees closed in on both sides. Emily's phone signal dropped to 0. She continued another 15 minutes until the trees thinned and the lake came into view, a glassy, undisturbed surface stretching out beneath a pale sky. The lodge wasn't a lodge at all, but a collection of small, weather-beaten cabins half-sunken into the slope above the lake. Most were abandoned. But one stood out. The door had a new lock. The steps looked recently replaced. She parked the car behind a thicket and approached on foot. No sound. Just the wind in the trees and her boots on the damp earth. She reached the door. Hesitated. Knocked once. No answer. She tried the handle. Locked. She stepped around to the side, found a narrow basement window, half open. She crouched, slid it upward, and squeezed through. The fall was short but jarring. She landed in what looked like a storage room, stacked firewood, an old mattress, a pile of tarps. She climbed the stairs quietly and pushed the basement door open. The main cabin was rustic but lived in. A cot with a wool blanket, a small desk, a kitchenette. On the table sat a thick folder marked with a single word, recast. Emily opened it. Inside were pages of transcripts, surveillance reports, timestamps, bank records, even images from hospital security footage. Some were of her. Others were of Lily. The photos had notes scribbled in the margins. One read, primary asset under surveillance. Avoid direct contact. Another, subject nearing comprehension. Phase 3 must accelerate. Her throat tightened. She turned another page and found a printed map with red lines drawn between cities, Los Angeles, Denver, Phoenix, and circled in bold was Fair Hollow. A note underneath, diversion point activated. Emily's hands shook. This cabin wasn't a memory from Michael's past. It was a staging point. And he hadn't been the only one here. She searched the desk drawers. In the bottom one, beneath a stack of burner phones and a passport, she found a USB drive. She pocketed it without thinking. She grabbed the folder, folded it into her coat, and moved toward the door. But the moment she stepped outside, a sound froze her. Footsteps. Fast. Crunching the gravel behind the cabin. She turned and saw a figure sprinting toward her, hooded, tall, closing distance fast. Emily ran. She cut through the woods, heart hammering, boots slipping on wet leaves. She didn't look back until she reached her car. She threw the door open, dove inside, slammed it shut, and hit the gas. As she peeled away, a hand struck the back window. She didn't stop. The road twisted and rose. She didn't ease up until the lake was gone behind the trees. An hour later, she pulled over, shaking, and plugged the USB into her laptop. Dozens of files opened, audio recordings, message logs, names she didn't recognize, detailed plans of Phase 3. One file was labeled, Final Transfer, Subject L. Parker. She clicked it. A video loaded. It showed a man in a hospital gown being wheeled down a corridor, Michael. But then the camera shifted. The nurse pushing the bed wasn't a nurse. It was Carlisle. Emily sat in stunned silence. Michael was being moved. And he wasn't in a coma. He was being hidden. Emily stared at the screen, the video still playing on loop, Carlisle pushing Michael down a hospital corridor, dressed not in a white coat, but a hospital-issued gown, his face calm, conscious, cooperative. The timestamp in the corner of the footage was from 3 days ago, well after Emily had visited the hospital, well after she had cried by his bedside believing he was comatose. Her breath came in shallow bursts, every muscle in her body tense as the realization solidified. Michael had never been in a coma. Not truly. Everything, the crash, the hospital stay, the limp hand resting under the blankets, had been part of the illusion. And Carlisle wasn't just a legal accomplice, he was orchestrating it with precision. Now they had moved Michael. Phase 3 had begun. Emily wasn't watching the unraveling of a plan. She was standing at its center, only now understanding the full scope of what had been constructed around her. Her phone vibrated. She hesitated, then picked it up. Unknown number. The message was short: "Stop digging or the next one won't be a warning." Emily swallowed the rising fear and shoved the laptop shut. She stuffed it into her bag, along with the USB and the last of the recovered documents. Her hands were cold, her face pale, but her mind was clear. If Michael was awake, then he could be reached. If he could be reached, he could be confronted. And Emily knew exactly where to start. She left the forest road and drove south, retracing her route to the hospital. It was a risk returning, but there was one person left who might still be honest with her: Jenna, the nurse who had been kind to her in those early days, before everything cracked open. When she arrived at St. Jude Medical Center, the sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the pavement. Emily pulled her hood low, avoided the main entrance, and used the staff side door she had once seen a janitor use. She moved through the hallway like a phantom, her footsteps quick, quiet, head down. She found Jenna near the nurse's station on the 4th floor, organizing a stack of charts. Jenna looked up, startled. "Emily? What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," Emily said, voice low. "Privately." Jenna hesitated. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know. But this is important. Please." Jenna studied her face, then nodded and led her into an empty consultation room. The moment the door shut, Emily pulled out her phone and played the video. Jenna watched in silence, her face losing color with each passing second. When the video ended, she looked away, hand covering her mouth. "Jesus," she whispered. "They said he was being transferred for specialist evaluation, that it was under hospital authority. We had no idea. Where did they take him?" "I don't know." Jenna's voice shook. "The man who came for him, he had documentation, security clearance. We were told not to question it. Said it was a government contract case." Emily stepped closer. "Please. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't have any idea where they took him." Jenna hesitated, then looked around and lowered her voice. "There's a private care facility north of the city. St. Amelie Recovery Center. We've had patients disappear into it before, quiet transfers, no paperwork, no discharge summaries. I always thought it was just for high-risk clients, people in witness protection or under investigation. Do you have the address?" Jenna scribbled it on a sticky note and handed it to her. Emily took it, tucked it in her pocket, and paused. "Thank you." Jenna looked like she wanted to say more but remained silent. Emily didn't wait. She left through the same staff door and drove toward St. Amelie, the world around her narrowing. Night fell quickly, and with it came a sense of finality. She was no longer reacting. She was moving toward resolution. The facility was secluded, surrounded by tall hedges and a long gated driveway. Emily parked half a mile away and approached on foot through the woods. The structure was modern, glass and stone, with a calm, almost serene aura, nothing to suggest it housed the kind of secrets Michael's plan required. There was no way to walk through the front doors unnoticed. So she circled the perimeter until she found a service entrance near the back, locked but not reinforced. A push and a well-placed rock pried it open. She slipped inside. The corridors were quiet, dimly lit, the air sterile and heavy with lavender-scented disinfectant. She avoided open spaces, listened carefully at every intersection, and eventually reached a hallway lined with individual rooms. Most doors were closed. Then she heard it. A voice. Male. Familiar. She followed it. Around the corner, past a storage cart, one door slightly ajar. She stepped closer. Inside, Michael sat on a hospital bed, talking to Carlyle, who stood beside him, arms folded. Emily pressed herself against the wall just beyond the doorway, holding her breath. "You said we had more time," Michael was saying. Carlyle responded, "We didn't expect her to find the cabin." Marcus panicked. "If she uploads that data, if it goes public, everything collapses." Michael's voice was low. "I didn't want Lily involved. That was never the plan." "You made her involved the moment you brought your family into this," Carlyle snapped. "This was your lie, Michael. I just structured it." Emily stepped forward, rage rising in her chest. "Then maybe you'll both explain it to me." Carlyle spun, startled. Michael's face went white. Emily stood in the doorway, drenched from the wet night, eyes blazing, the folder of documents in one hand, the USB drive in the other. "Hello, Michael," she said. "It's time we stopped pretending." Michael stood, but the movement was slow, cautious. "Emily." She stepped into the room. "No more lies. No more fake comas. No more codes. Tell me everything. Right now." Carlyle moved toward her, but she raised her phone. "I've backed up everything. Try anything, and it goes to the press. Every file, every name, every transfer. You'll burn." Carlyle froze. Michael sat again, his face a wreck of shame, fear, and something else, resignation. "I thought I could get us out," he said quietly. "I thought if I disappeared, you and Lily would be free from everything I did before. The debts. The blackmail. The people I worked for. You didn't save us," Emily said. "You dragged us into it." "I know." His voice cracked. "I was weak." She looked at him. The man she once married. The father of her child. A stranger now. "Where's Lily?" she demanded. Michael looked up sharply. "What?" "She's gone. Taken from the motel." "Where is she?" Michael turned to Carlyle. "You said she'd be safe." Carlyle's face was unreadable. "You forfeited guarantees the moment you broke containment. Your wife turned this into a liability." Emily stepped between them. "Where is my daughter?" Carlyle didn't move. Michael's voice rose. "David, if anything happens to her." "She's alive," Carlyle interrupted. "But you're out of leverage now. And so is she." Emily stared at him, then turned to Michael. "Fix it," she said. "Right now. Or I swear to God, I will burn your entire empire to the ground." Michael didn't speak right away. He looked between Emily and Carlyle, his face contorted in a silent panic, jaw trembling, eyes flickering with a deep recognition that something had moved beyond his control. The hospital room, so carefully constructed, private, quiet, now felt like a courtroom. Emily stood before him not as a wife betrayed, but as a force of reckoning. "Where is she?" Emily repeated, her voice sharp, leaving no space for diversion. "Lily. Tell me now." Michael's mouth opened, then closed. He turned slowly toward Carlyle, but the lawyer, former or otherwise, was already moving. Not fast. Calculated. Intentional. He walked to the far end of the room where a locked cabinet stood under a mounted monitor. He tapped in a code Emily couldn't see and retrieved a manila folder and a small black box the size of a hard drive. He laid them both on the tray table. "I told you," Carlyle said calmly, "She's alive. She's safe. For now." Emily moved toward him. "Where is she being held?" "Not held," Carlyle replied. "Protected. Secured. Think of it as insurance against rash decisions." Emily slammed her hand on the tray table, sending the folder sliding toward the edge. "You want to talk about rash decisions? You faked a coma. You orchestrated a disappearance. You stole identities, rerouted assets, created a conspiracy so deep you don't even know who's in charge anymore." Carlyle didn't flinch. "You're right. But so are you. This has gone too far." He looked at Michael. "Tell her. You owe her that much." Michael lowered his head, as if releasing something he'd been trying to suppress for too long. It wasn't just about the debt. Or the fraud. Or the escape. It started with them, the ones who came to me before any of this. Emily crossed her arms. "Them?" Michael nodded. "Investors. Or that's what they called themselves. They found me after my software firm failed. They offered a bailout in exchange for access to every asset I had, data, accounts, insurance. They called it restructuring. I didn't ask questions. I was desperate." Carlyle added, "They're not just investors. They operate above legal infrastructure. Shell entities, private equities, legal cutouts. If Michael had refused, they'd have destroyed him completely." Michael looked up. "I thought I could outplay them. That if I gave them what they wanted, I could protect you and Lily. But then they wanted more. They wanted clean identities, clean exits, contingency plans." Emily's stomach twisted. "And Lily?" Michael hesitated. "They never mentioned her. Not until recently. When things started falling apart, I think they saw her as leverage. A way to ensure silence." Emily's voice dropped. "So she's a hostage." Carlyle finally opened the black box. Inside was a phone, sleek, encrypted, screen black. He handed it to her. "This is your line," he said. "It connects directly to the holding contact. Use it once. Ask for confirmation she's alive. That's all they'll allow." Emily stared at the device. It looked sterile. Clinical. Designed for control. She powered it on. It lit up immediately, no password, just a single icon pulsing, "Connect." She pressed it. A few seconds of silence. Then a voice. "Male. Flat. Identification." Emily answered, "Emily Roth." A pause. Then, "Hold." Static hummed. Then silence. Then, "Mom?" Emily's breath caught. "Lily? Are you okay?" "I'm in a room. There's a window. A lady brings me food. She says I'm safe." Tears rushed to Emily's eyes. "I'm coming to get you. I promise." "Okay," Lily said softly. "But hurry. I don't like the dark here." The line cut off. Emily lowered the phone. She turned to Carlyle. "Where is she?" He pointed to the folder. "That's your next move. Coordinates. Instructions. But if you go there without following protocol, they'll move her again. Or worse." Michael stood. "Let me go instead." Emily turned on him. "You lost the right to volunteer." His face flushed. "I didn't want this." "You planned this," she snapped. "You designed the trap and fell into it willingly. And now she's paying the price." Carlyle stepped between them. "The only chance you have now is to cooperate. Quietly. Strategically. You make this public, you'll lose her. Permanently." Emily took the folder. Inside, she found GPS coordinates, satellite images of a secluded compound, and a page titled, "Transfer Protocols for Contained Subject, LP." The instructions were brutally clear: 1 vehicle, no phones, arrival between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning, surrender documents upon entry. She looked up. If I follow this, they'll let her go? Carlyle said nothing. Michael whispered, I don't know. Emily tucked the folder under her arm and backed toward the door. You're not going alone, Michael said. Emily laughed bitterly. You think I trust you now? No, he said, but I know what's waiting there. And I'm the only one they expect. If you show up without me, they'll see it as defiance. Carlyle nodded reluctantly. He's right. Emily looked at both men, her eyes like sharpened glass. If anything happens to her, I'll take all of this, every file, every video, every asset trail, and I will feed it to every journalist in the country. Michael nodded. Understood. That night, Emily barely slept. She drove Michael in silence. Carlyle didn't come. They followed the GPS until the road narrowed into dust, until fences topped with motion sensors emerged from the trees. Armed guards met them at the gate, faceless behind mirrored visors. Emily handed over the folder. One of the guards scanned it, then nodded. You have 10 minutes, he said. They were led down a long corridor into a white room. At the far end, Lily stood beside a woman in a nurse's uniform. She looked unharmed. But the moment her eyes met Emily's, she broke into a run. Mom! Emily caught her, lifting her off the ground, holding her as if nothing else in the world mattered. Tears streamed down her face as she kissed her daughter's head again and again. You're safe, she whispered. You're safe now. Behind her, Michael said nothing. The guards closed in. You can go, one said to Emily. He stays. Emily looked at Michael. This is how it ends? He nodded. It has to. She didn't say goodbye. She took Lily's hand and walked out. They drove in silence for miles before Lily finally spoke. He said you would come. Emily looked at her in the rearview mirror. I never stopped. The sun had begun to rise by the time Emily pulled into the empty lot of a roadside in 50 miles from the facility. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but her body felt hollow, every movement mechanical. Lily had fallen asleep in the back seat, curled up beneath a wool blanket Emily had kept in the trunk for emergencies. She hadn't asked for music, or snacks, or stories, just closed her eyes and drifted off like the weight of the past few days had finally collapsed in on her. Emily parked the car and sat there for a long time, staring at the dash, watching the clock tick forward. 7 hours. That was how long it had taken from the moment she received the photo of Lily's doll to the moment she held her again. 7 hours that felt like a lifetime. But she knew it wasn't over. Michael hadn't been arrested. He hadn't confessed to authorities. The files hadn't been submitted to prosecutors. And the people who had orchestrated Lily's abduction remained unnamed, untouched, and still fully operational. Their threat lingered, not as visible as before, but woven through every email address, every burner phone, every cryptic protocol buried inside Michael's elaborate conspiracy. Now she faced a choice. Expose everything, and risk Lily becoming a target once more. Or bury the truth, protect her daughter, and live with the weight of silence. She glanced into the rearview mirror. Lily stirred slightly, her arm tightening around the edge of the blanket. Her hair was damp from sleep, cheeks pale, but peaceful. Emily stepped out of the car, letting the cold morning air clear her thoughts. She leaned against the hood and took a long breath. The motel was still quiet. The sky above had that crisp gray tone that came before full light. Birds chirped distantly, the world turning without awareness of what she had just survived. Her phone buzzed. It was a new number. No name attached. Just a text. Consider your daughter a lesson. Stay quiet. Be grateful. Emily didn't flinch. She saved the message, screenshotted it, and then forwarded it to a contact she hadn't used in years, Samantha Fielding, an old friend from college who now worked as a federal prosecutor in Chicago. They hadn't spoken in a long time, but Samantha had once said, half joking, "If you're ever in trouble and need to burn something big, I'm your girl." Emily added no explanation. Just the message and the word, "Call me." She didn't know if Samantha would reply, or what kind of response that message would trigger, but she had to have a lifeline, someone outside the system that had failed to protect her. Inside the room, Lily was still asleep when Emily carried her to the bed. She wrapped her in a second blanket, drew the curtains closed, and locked every bolt on the door. She sat at the small table in the corner, opened her laptop, and plugged in the USB drive she had recovered from the cabin. The files were all still intact. Copies of transfer documents, asset laundering trails, offshore banking credentials, logs of encrypted calls, all of it tied to Michael's operation. But there was one folder she hadn't opened before, buried 3 directories deep, labeled Redemption. Inside were audio files. Dozens of them. The first one dated back nearly 10 months. Emily put on her headphones and pressed play. Michael's voice filled her ears, hesitant, quieter than she remembered, like a man talking to himself in a confessional booth. "If you're listening to this, Em, then something's gone wrong. And I mean really wrong. Because this file was never meant to be played unless I had completely lost control." His voice paused, then returned, softer. "I know you hate me. Or you will, when you figure it out. And I won't blame you. But I need you to know something. I didn't start this to betray you. I started it to protect you." Emily's chest tightened. "I was drowning. Not just financially, mentally. I thought about disappearing 100 times before I ever met Carlisle or Rachel. But when they came to me, I saw a way to fix everything. To erase the debt, hide the shame. But the deeper I got, the more I realized I wasn't in control anymore. They were. Every move I made was calculated by them. Every lie I told you was written for me. Every time I tried to find a way out, they reminded me who they could hurt." Another pause. Then they started asking about Lily. Emily gripped the table, her jaw clenched. "That was my breaking point. That's when I started building the secondary plan. Bluebird wasn't just theirs. It was mine too. I hid pieces. I copied files. I left trails, digital traps, leverage. I didn't know if I'd survive long enough to use them, but I knew if they ever touched her, I'd need something to trade." Emily opened a second file. It was a recording of a call, Michael speaking to someone else, presumably Marcus. "She's going to find out soon," Michael said. "You sure she's ready?" Marcus asked. "She doesn't have a choice," Michael replied. "She's stronger than I ever was." Emily stopped the audio and leaned back. The weight of his words settled on her like a second skin. She had been so focused on the betrayal, the manipulation, the sheer scale of Michael's deception, that she hadn't considered the possibility that he might have been just as trapped as she was. That perhaps, in the quiet hours of his madness, he had tried to engineer an escape route for her and Lily, even if it cost him everything. She closed the laptop. Lily stirred. Emily walked to her side and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Mom?" Lily murmured, eyes still closed. "I'm here. Is it over?" Emily hesitated. "Almost." Later that afternoon, her phone rang. It was Samantha. "I got your message," her voice was sharp. "Where are you?" Emily gave her the location, omitting details. Samantha didn't ask why. She just said, "Sit tight. And don't go anywhere." "I'm driving out." Emily agreed. That night, as the sky turned orange outside the window and Lily played quietly on the bed with a puzzle Emily had picked up from the inn's reception desk, she sat at the table with the laptop and opened a new document. She titled it, "The Truth About Michael Parker." Then she started writing. Not for revenge. Not for justice. But for Lily. Because one day, her daughter would ask about this. And when that day came, Emily didn't want to lie. Samantha arrived just before midnight. Emily heard the car pull into the gravel lot outside the inn, headlights sweeping briefly across the window blinds. She watched from the edge of the curtain as her old friend stepped out of a rental SUV, her blazer creased from hours on the road, a small briefcase in one hand. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her heels exchanged for weather-worn boots. Emily opened the door before she could knock. "You look like hell," Samantha said softly, stepping inside. "I earned it," Emily replied. They embraced, 10 seconds of exhausted silence and years of distance erased. Samantha looked around the small room, spotted Lily asleep in bed, and nodded with a sort of professional sorrow. "So, is everything you sent me real?" Emily picked up the laptop from the nightstand, opened the folder titled Recast, and pushed it toward her. "You tell me." Samantha sat at the table, pulled out a portable drive from her bag, and connected it. Her eyes moved quickly over the documents, asset trails, passport forgeries, recordings, and the folder marked Redemption. She paused often, made notes, flagged files, and barely blinked for nearly half an hour. When she finally looked up, her face was pale. "This is bigger than you realize," she said. Emily didn't move. "How big?" "International. Multi-agency. Financial, legal, even military implications. This is organized crime woven into political and economic systems. If we release this, it won't just end Michael's story, it could ignite something far wider. You'll be hunted. Lily, too." Emily had anticipated this. "I'm not giving it to the public. I just needed to know someone trustworthy had it. I needed a fail-safe." Samantha exhaled. "And Michael?" Emily shook her head. "Still at the facility. I left him there. He gave me Lily, and I gave him silence. That was the trade." Samantha didn't respond at first. Then she said, "He won't stay quiet forever. And neither will they. You know that." "I do. So what's your plan?" Emily reached into her bag and handed her a second USB. "You take this. You hold it. If anything happens to me, or to Lily, you send it everywhere. Press. Intelligence. Congress." Samantha looked at the drive, then back at Emily. "You're serious?" "Completely." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees beyond the lot. The quiet of the night was thick, the kind that usually comes before something breaks. Emily poured 2 cups of bad motel coffee. They drank in silence. It was Samantha who finally broke it. "You could vanish, you know. I have contacts. Off-the-grid identities. New names, clean files. You and Lily could disappear." Emily nodded. "I thought about it. And? I don't want to live afraid," she said. "I want Lily to grow up knowing that we survived without becoming ghosts." Samantha studied her. "Then you'll need protection. Real protection." Emily gave a tight smile. "You offering?" Samantha leaned back. "I'm already here, aren't I?" They made plans through the night: temporary housing in a secure community out of state, custody documentation to protect Emily from any legal challenge, quiet communications with federal agencies already pursuing tangential cases that could absorb Michael's story without revealing Lily's involvement. By morning, the plan was in motion. Emily woke Lily just after dawn. They packed their things, and by 8 o'clock, they were driving again, Samantha in the car ahead, Emily and Lily behind. No questions from Lily, just quiet trust. The safe house was small, nestled in the hills of a rural county 2 states away. A retired agent owned the property, someone Samantha had helped once and who owed her a favor. The house was plain, surrounded by trees, with a single gravel road leading in and no visible neighbors for miles. It was perfect. Lily adjusted quickly. She spent her days drawing in a sunlit room with wide windows and climbing the low trees in the backyard. Emily cooked, cleaned, and slowly began to breathe again. She didn't touch the files. She didn't check the news. She didn't answer blocked numbers. She watched her daughter laugh, and for the first time in weeks, she believed they might be free. But freedom, she knew, was fragile. 1 week after arriving at the safe house, Samantha called. "They found Michael," she said. "Or rather, he gave himself up." Emily sat down. "Where?" "Washington, D.C. He walked into a federal building and handed over a partial file, a fraction of what we have. He's bargaining." Emily felt her jaw clench. "For immunity?" "Possibly. But here's the twist. He told them you were the one who collected the evidence. That you're the one they need to question." Emily went cold. "He gave them my name?" "Only to one person. Someone he trusted. A young agent. The rest of the team suspects he's manipulating them, buying time. But the file he handed over? It's legit. And it's starting to shake some very powerful cages." Emily stood, walking to the window. "What happens now?" "You stay quiet," Samantha said. "Stay safe. I'll clean this up from here." "But Emily, listen, this doesn't go away. You were at the heart of something most people don't even know exists. There's no walking away clean. Only walking carefully." "I understand." Before they hung up, Samantha added, "He left a letter. For you." Emily didn't answer. Samantha continued. "Do you want it?" Emily thought for a long time. Then, finally, "No." That evening, Emily sat on the porch while Lily ran barefoot through the tall grass, chasing a butterfly. The sky turned golden as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows on the world that had once felt so dark. She breathed in deeply. In her mind, Michael's voice lingered, not from a recording, not from memory, but from that final moment in the White Room, when their eyes met and he finally saw the cost of everything he had done. Emily had no intention of forgiving him. But she wouldn't spend her life running from him either. She pulled out a fresh notebook and began writing again, not a confession, not a statement, just memories. Stories for Lily. Truths not tied to surveillance, escape routes, or contingency plans. Moments of love. Of joy. Of lessons learned the hard way. Because one day, Lily would grow up. She would ask about her father. And Emily would be ready to answer. Not with lies. Not with bitterness. But with clarity. And strength. Because the past may have tried to bury them, but the future, finally, belonged to them.